right, Matt Freeman here with our Sports Daily with new Notre Dame commit Drayk Bowen. Congrats on the commitment. First off, I mean, a lot of people thought that you were going to commit to Notre Dame just because you were hour and a half away, but that wasn't the case. I mean, you grew up in Northwest Indiana, and most felt like you would choose Notre Dame for those reasons. But I mean, why was Notre Dame not on your radar just growing up and going through your recruitment?
So growing up, really, all I wanted to do was go to the South. My dad was from the South, so then my uncle and aunt were from the South. So all the football on was SEC, ACC, all South. So that's really all I had ever thought of or really wanted to go.
And then, I mean, obviously you had a connection with Alabama. I mean, I guess, can you kind of expand on, you mentioned your family, but kind of expand how you kind of grew up to become an Alabama fan?
So my uncle and aunt, they both graduated from Alabama. Her dad played baseball at Alabama, so they had all graduated. So they loved it, and it was on every single weekend. Main screen. They had other games on, but it was always the main point. And so Texas Longhorns, and we went to Longhorn Network, so we couldn't watch them anymore. So at probably about 8, I went up to my dad and I was like, "Dad, can I be an Alabama fan?" And so ever since then, I'd always dreamed to go in Alabama, watched them, wanted to play for them. So that was really why.
And you even had like a fathead in your garage of Alabama, right?
Yes, sir.
And then you actually went down to Alabama this summer, camped there, tried to get the offer and everything, but they didn't. I mean, was that a tough moment for you, just given how you grew up an Alabama fan, and not getting the offer? Was that kind of motivating for you?
I would say it was both. In the moment, it was tough just because it was a school I dreamed of playing at, and they said they were going to recruit me hard, but it never really happened. Baseball had talked to me for a while, and they even tried to make me just try to do one sport, and I had always dreamed of two, so I was like, no, I just can't do that. But it was also motivating just because I wanted to show them what they missed out on, and that I could be something playing the SEC.
And then let's kind of dive into your recruitment. Marcus Freeman was actually the first coach to offer you back when he was at Cincinnati. Do you remember just kind of the emotions that you had in that moment? Just because, I mean, I guess you told your grandma that you were going to play college football when you were 8 or 9 years old. So, I mean, that kind of came to fruition at that point. What was that moment like for you?
So I was extremely excited, and it kind of almost felt it was surreal for me, just because all the work that I had done up to that point, it was starting to pay off, and so that was just the first kind of taste of it, I guess. So it just kind of motivated me to want to work harder and to keep achieving more.
Was your family kind of surprised that offer came when it did?
Yes, sir. Nobody really expected it, because we hadn't, obviously we had done Twitter and sent out huddle film and everything, but no college coach had really said anything that we had known about, so they kind of came out of nowhere.
And then obviously COVID prevented you from going on visits and stuff, but when that opened back up, you obviously took the visit to Notre Dame, but then you guys took a huge swing through the South. I mean, what was that like for you, just seeing something outside of the region? And I guess what were a couple highlights or surprises for you just kind of going to those schools down there?
I would say it was pretty incredible just to see all the college coaches that you see on TV that really nobody else sees outside of TV unless you go to that school. And then going to schools that I dreamed of playing about, like Alabama or like LSU or something like that. Seeing that was just incredible for me, just to know that they wanted me just as much as I wanted to go there.
And then once the summer ended, I mean, you went down to Clemson as well, and I think Clemson might have been your leader at that point, just given the baseball connections down there too. Is that safe to say that they were in the lead at that point?
Yes, sir.
I guess what was it about Clemson that just kind of put them ahead of some of the other schools?
So, growing up, Clemson was also like a dream school just because they were always competing with Alabama in national championships. So they were down south, and they had competed at a high level for so long that it was either between them or Alabama were really my top two choices of schools that I would want to go to.
And then came out with the top three of Notre Dame, Auburn, and Clemson. Auburn, I think, was a lot closer than a lot of people thought. What was it about the baseball and football program that kind of gained momentum this fall? And what was your visit like down there earlier in October?
So I'd say it was the relationships I had with both football and baseball. I had great relationships on both sides. And I know with the visit, I got to see the baseball for the first time face to face, and then also talk with football again. But they kind of both just laid out the blueprint of what my schedule would look like if I were to go there too. So that was definitely a highlight. But also getting to see a SEC game between Georgia and Auburn, which I only saw that ever on TV. So going to see that and kind of know it was in the South, a place where I would want to be, always dreamed of playing in the SEC, was awesome for me.
And then Notre Dame made the commitment. I mean, what made you realize that Notre Dame was the place for you after kind of battling Clemson, Auburn, Notre Dame? Why Notre Dame?
So after talking with my family and some mentors, really we laid out all the pros and cons of each school. And so, Notre Dame, I knew was a great education, great school, close to home. But close to home never really mattered to me just because I was always gone during baseball. So, Clemson and Auburn were in the South, so that had already kind of put them almost ahead. And so kind of laying out everything, I told them everything about the other two schools and got to Notre Dame, and I was like, Notre Dame's education is something I want, just because I know that, obviously education is going to take you way past football. But it was also, I tried to kind of eliminate them almost from like my recruitment. Like, it had never been Notre Dame in my eyes because it was in the North. I'd always want to go South, play SEC, ACC. So I'd known they were a great school, but it was never them. And so kind of going through how I can never find something necessarily wrong with the school, or had no reason to eliminate them from my choices, just kind of kept them in there. And then at one point I just couldn't say no to Coach Freeman and to the school.
Mm-hmm. Now, this may come as a surprise to some people, but you actually committed right before the USC game to Marcus Freeman and Brian Kelly. What was that moment like for you? Did it just feel like the world came off your shoulders? And I guess what was their reaction? Because, they're pretty fun.
Yeah, so it definitely was a relief just to know that I didn't have to, kind of necessarily, obviously I knew still going to get recruited, but it wasn't like it was before. It was a surreal moment just to be with them, kind of tell them when they least expected it. Coach Freeman kind of just sat there, didn't really know what to do, and Coach Bowden was excited, just how he gets. And then, telling Coach Kelly, he was just the same. He didn't really expect it either. So it was kind of just a surprise for all three of them.
That's awesome. And then one common denominator on your visits was you made it with your dad and your younger brother, Dylan. Why was that important for you to go with those two on your visits?
So obviously my family has been important to me, just because they've been there every step of the way. But, my dad, who really taken me everywhere for travel ball, and so kind of has supported me through all this. I wanted him to go just to show that all of his work that he helped me achieve and all the people that he put in my life that were going to help me achieve my dream had actually come. And then, taking my brother was just to show him that there's more outside of this. So he wants to do what I'm going through right now just in baseball. But, I wanted to show him what else there was outside of just Northwest Indiana.
And then outside of football, baseball, I'm not sure people also understood how much baseball factored into your decision. What was it about Link Jarrett and Rich Wallace that kind of sold you on Notre Dame and stood out to you as well?
So with Coach Jarrett, it was his enthusiasm for the game of baseball, just how much he loved it and how much he wanted his players to work for it. and how much he supported them. But also his attention to detail. Everything was taken into detail. The slightest measurements that you wouldn't even think of, he had thought of and was putting it into his practice plan. And then with Coach Wallace, it was how I'm going to take baseball and put it into life, kind of how I'm going to grow into and learn life. And then also how they said I could play middles. So that was a big thing.
No, Notre Dame baseball was on you before football, right?
Yes, sir.
And then can you kind of lay out the plan that Coach Jarrett has for you as a baseball player and football player, just kind of balancing those two?
So him and Coach Kelly had met, and they kind of made a plan what they thought was best for both sports and for me. So really it just outlined the practice plans for different types of seasons, what would take over in a certain type of season, and then if there ever needed to be changes, that I would just have to communicate with them. But that was the main thing, was just what would take priority and how they would work together.
And then finally, I mean, I have to ask because the Notre Dame fans will kill me if I don't, but now that you're committed and one of the top-ranked prospects in the country, I mean, who are you going to go after at this point?
So, I definitely have some recruits in mind, like Sonny, Luke, and Carnell. But, I want them to kind of figure out where their best fit is. And if it's at Notre Dame, great. But if it's not, then, I'll be happy for them just because they found the place that was best fit for them and they're happy with it. So I will definitely try to get them here, though.